Very nice to see you. I am so excited to be here. So, Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, glad to. Hi, everybody. Matt Minahan is my name. I'm on the AU faculty for about 10 years, teaching the key program for 7 or 8 years. And I've been teaching for about 25 years, including the master's and doctoral level. I do some guest lecturing in doctoral programs around the country. Been in the business for about 40 years, have my own consulting firm for 25 years now, and been chair of the board of the OD network and on the local Chesapeake Bay OD network board, on the board and a longtime member of NTL Institute. So I'm really excited about the content here. Pleased to see all of you here. Very happy to be engaged in conversation throughout as we go through this program today. And I know that Karen has a lot of cool stuff that you're going to love seeing. So, and thanks, Lam. She's put into the chat that the speaker bios are there. Okay, Karen, thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt. So I am organization development practitioner. I got my master's from American University, and at the time it was the AU NTL program. And I work now mostly in the field of education. And I am presently working with state departments of education in DC, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. I also work with local, state, and government agencies. I love to watch TV. I love to read. I love to listen to Audible. And my favorite thing, though, is spending time with family, and especially my grandson. And I have a new granddaughter that'll be coming into the world in January. So I'm super excited about that. Awesome. So we're first going to go into this self-awareness, the indispensable tool for igniting creativity and innovation. And that's the topic. So we want to just talk a little bit about what is self-awareness. And I'd like to start by just asking you what you think self-awareness, what does the term self-awareness mean to you?
Be conscious of your unconscious biases.
Awesome. Really good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Carolyn. Anyone else? What does self-awareness mean to you?
I would have to say that it's an ability to focus on yourself and how your thoughts, I'd say emotions or actions guide how you behave with other people.
Awesome. Really great. And I'll share just a definition or two. All of you are really correct in what self-awareness is. And Matt, could you read this for me?
Yes. Self-awareness is often defined as conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. It's key to self-control, decision-making, creativity, learning, growth, and self-fulfillment. It creates value and helps you to influence others. It's a tool to proactively manage your own beliefs, thoughts, emotions, decisions, and behaviors.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can see those of you who spoke, your definition is right in there as well. Here's another definition that I'd like to share as well. The ability to monitor our inner world. And this is a definition that Daniel Goleman uses as for self-awareness. If we think about self-awareness, great leaders are self-aware, and they practice self-awareness activities daily. If you think about it, who doesn't want more clarity, empowerment, motivation, and positive energy flowing throughout their daily life? And those who are really great leaders who are self-aware, they're able to do that for themselves and also inspire their employees. Self-aware leaders use their awareness of emotions and how they impact others as a method to, again, inspire, motivate, and challenge others. And they garner greater performance. So by doing this, they have greater performance from their employees. Also, they are more trusted and they can give a clearer direction and purpose to their teams, again, inspiring them to raise their levels of performance. Do you know leaders who are self-aware? Do any of you have leaders that you've come into contact with who you feel are self-aware?
Well, I was thinking of the opposite question, and that is, having worked for bosses that I thought were not particularly effective, not particularly self-aware. I'm imagining that a lot of people see their bosses in that frame. Mm-hmm. But having had my own company for 25 years, I haven't really had any bosses during that time. I recall I had a couple bosses when I was internal at the World Bank, and what made them really good for me was that they were more. They prioritized my interests and what I wanted to do over their own. And so rather than you've got to do this because I have to have you do it, it was tell me what you want to do that would be of interest to you. And so they weren't being driven by their own small, narrow self-interest. They were being driven by what it was that would have been fulfilling and interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So there was a level of self-awareness there that I really appreciated, and I think that's a wonderful thing to have in a boss.
Yep, I totally agree. I would say the latter for me, that I have had experiences with many bosses who aren't self-aware. And presently, though, I work part-time for a research organization, and then I also work for myself. But presently, my boss, I actually, a lot of the people that I work with are really self-aware. And I say that because they are doing some of the same things you just mentioned. They're listening, they're responding. They really look at how we support each other and collaborate and co-create. And to me, those are some elements of really being self-aware. And it's also like looking, like thinking about who are the leaders. Do leaders have to be like my boss, or can they also be my colleagues as well? We're going to move on now to cultivating self-awareness. I would like to talk a little bit about my journey of self-awareness. And I would say that about maybe 15, 16 years ago, I decided to get to know myself. And I think what caused me to do that was that I realized that I was just doing things automatically. And I was just like walking through life as automatic, right? And not able to think about what I was doing, or not even in touch with who I was. And so I started my journey then, and it might have been a little more than 16 years. But I would say that the way I decided to do it was through programs and courses, through self-development. So I took courses that would really have me dig deeper into who I was. And then I made a conscious decision or choice to really do that work as the course went. So I took lots of courses and I interacted with a lot of people. And that's how my journey began. And I would say that for me, it's a continuous journey of self-awareness. It doesn't stop. I'm always learning about myself or relearning about myself in my quest to really be a self-aware person.
Karen, so that's in the chat. Carolyn Yee has written that her interest is in current federal and state emphasis on understanding, acknowledging, resolving entrenched systemic racist policies toward tribal, EJ, and rural communities.
Okay, thank you. And I think if we think about that, if we think about what it is that you'd like to learn more about, I wouldn't say that we talk specifically about that topic today, but I would say that in order for the policies to change, in order for there to be understanding and acknowledgement in those areas, that the people who are the decision makers have to have a level of self-awareness and understanding that these are important things that need to happen. So I wouldn't say we're going to go specifically there, but I'm hoping that some of the information that we share could give you some insight in what it might take for a leader to look at these areas with a focus on how do I make things better systemically. And so here are some tips to cultivate self-awareness. And as I said, I had to be curious about who I really am. So just being self-aware, we need to be curious about ourselves. Our minds and our bodies are territories for which we need roadmaps. Sometimes I found that I did. And as we look at these roadmaps, we might not want to go down some roads, but it's really about how far will we go into our journey to understand ourselves. And that really depends on whether we're ready to explore and experience ourselves. So the next one is let your walls down. And I'm sure you all know what that means. And it's really, if we see something about ourselves as something that we don't immediately like in ourselves, usually our first reaction is to defend ourselves from it. And that can be internally or with someone else. So, which is partly why self-awareness is so challenging. And because we have to look at ourselves, and that makes it really challenging. So one of the things we can do if we let our walls down is to try to let go of judgment and judgment of self and the instinctual urge to protect ourselves. So that's one way. And I know that's what I had to do, is really, really be honest with myself and be willing to let my walls down. Look in the mirror, literally. And Anna Jovinic, who is a psychologist, says she teaches people to use mirrors as a meditation tool that increases their self-awareness. And she says when people first look at themselves, they're often very critical. And I can tell you that is true for me. And that is something I'm still trying to get over. She says that she teaches them how to shift their perspective and use their reflection for deeper awareness. So they really learn how to track their attention and emotions to gain new insights into how their thoughts and feelings are affecting them in real life. So looking in the mirror, coming face to face with ourselves, with our conversations, it really involves deep listening and being fully present with ourselves and with other people as well. And the fourth point is to keep a journal and note what triggers feelings. So I'm wondering if any of you keep a journal and really kind of keep a daily journal. I have a couple of friends who really journal all the time. I would say that's not my thing, but I do journal if I find something difficult.
Suzanne says, I would say that my experience with leadership is that there's a general lack of self-awareness. People who are good leaders feel that they're not good, and those that are poor leaders feel that they are superior.
Thank you very much for that. for that
I think
acknowledgement.
that comes down to a theme that I know I worked on at the World Bank for a number of years, and that is organizations promoting managers who are technically superior but interpersonally deficient. And I got hired into the bank because our managers were technically magnificent. They were impeccable. They were the best in the world, and yet they were impossible as human beings. And the first request I had from the VP of personnel at the time was, what about sensitivity training for our managers? And so my first several years there was all about that, just as Suzanne has suggested here. So I think that's a real concern, Suzanne, and I think you're right about that, as you mentioned, Karen.
Matt, did that sensitivity training help to cultivate or begin to cultivate self-awareness in those managers?
Yeah, what we did is we created 3 one-week programs that met once a month. So we started with newly appointed managers who had just been promoted before they'd gotten into bad habits. And so the first week was on self-awareness. What do you know about yourself? And so we had instrumented learning, the Myers-Briggs, the Thyro-B, the Kirtan Adaptation Innovation Index. There was a creativity index and a 360. And the second week was on managing the individual. And so these were the skills of feedback. And, and the whole concept that when we give feedback to someone, we are saying more about ourselves than we are about the person. And there was practice giving feedback, some role plays and videos. And then the third week was on managing the team and aligning the with strategy. And so, yes, I think that greatly improved the managers overall as a class at the World Bank. And by the time I moved into org design about 5 years later, we had trained something like 60% of the managers of the bank. And we could see the results because the attitude survey showed in the places where our managers had attended that staff reported more engagement. Staff reported more communication with their managers. Staff reported more satisfaction with their managers. So yes, it worked.
That's awesome. Thank you. Sometimes what happens is, especially when they have brilliant people, they might be doing their own work and then they automatically promote them to manager or a leader without giving them that support that they need to actually help them cultivate self-awareness. So that was really good that your HR department saw that was a need. Thank you for sharing that story, Matt.
In the chat, Carolyn writes to Suzanne, kudos to you in recognizing these human characteristics in some people.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. So another one is substitute some screen time with human time. And that's really important, especially since we've been in a sort of lockdown mode with the pandemic. I think that screen time has increased and people time has decreased for the most part. So we do, as human beings, spend a lot of time gazing on our screens. And research shows that this has now surpassed the face-to-face time and face-to-face contact. So as we spend more time alone with our devices, we miss the human essential mirroring. And the symptoms of the lack of mirroring are becoming more apparent in our society. And you probably can see results of that around the country as you hear news stories. It increases in anxiety, a lack of empathy is increased, and also intense self-objectification. And I believe that the pandemic has really caused an increase in all of those areas, especially the lack of face-to-face contact. And then another thing we can do is ask others how they see us. And I did not put it up there, but not only should we build our own face-to-face social actions, but also use a portion of this time to learn how others, especially our loved ones, perceive us. So talk to a close friend and this actually takes acts of bravery and being courageous to ask them how they see us in various situations. As I told you, on my self-awareness journey, as part of a course that I was taking, this was one of my assignments where I had to get perspectives on how others saw how I was seen to others. And this really helped me to bring my awareness into focus in areas that I was originally was visible to me or blind to me. So that was really helpful. So ask others how they see you. Another one is if you're angry, take the third person perspective. In anger, sometimes we can always also see how we react to certain situations. And so the benefits of self-awareness in these times serve as an emotional management, but also helps to serve us in how we react to our relationships. So it's important to try to catch ourselves in situations and if people agitate us. And just how we could ask ourselves, how would I advise you if you were caring for a friend or watching my behavior? So just kind of taking a third person perspective could give us insight into our own selves. And then the last one is just keep checking in with ourselves. And that's a continuous process of really checking into ourselves. I know when I first started my self-awareness journey, and a lot of times they say, well, how are you feeling? How are you feeling? And I honestly could not get in touch with my feelings. And so one of the things I did have is a list of feelings and emotions, which helped me then to kind of verbalize how I was feeling. So that was an important part of my journey, is really getting in touch with my emotions and how I was feeling at certain times. And that is something that I'm still working on right now. Awesome. So we're going to watch a video from Tasha Urich, and she is an organization psychologist, and she is also an author of the book Insight. And she gives us 3 tips for becoming more self-aware. So we're going to put that up. Also, while we're putting that up, she also created an insight quiz to measure our level of self-awareness. And I'll share this link with you at the end of the session. Thank you.
So what are 3 techniques or strategies to help someone become more self-aware? In the course of researching my book, Insight, one of the things we did was very exhaustively examine these people that we called unicorns. Now, unicorns are people that did not start out as highly self-aware as adults and made absolutely transformational improvements in their level of self-awareness. And based on the things they taught me, I can suggest 3 things. The first is really a mindset. It's to make the decision that I want to know the truth. That's one of the things in my book that I call braver, but wiser. Number 2 is simply to get more feedback. One of the things we see over and over again in the research on this is that other people can usually see us far more objectively than we see ourselves. The third tool is a little bit counterintuitive. A lot of times when people try to become more self-aware, they ask themselves why. Why did I do this? Why do I want that? But what my research has found pretty shockingly is that those questions don't result in any more insight. So the tool I recommend is called What, Not Why. So instead of asking, for example, why did I say something so mean to my husband? You might say, what do I want to do to change our relationship? One person that's a great anecdote of what happens when you improve your self-awareness is an executive I worked with a few years back. Let's call him Steve. And although Steve thought he was pretty amazing, he was doing a terrible job of leading that function. His people were intimidated by him. He would start yelling and screaming at them with the slightest provocation, and he clearly had absolutely no idea how he was coming across. And once we went through that process of getting feedback from his team, understanding the things he needed to work on, things like asking questions, showing empathy, being compassionate, things that he had completely missed in his career to date, Steve was able to completely turn around not just his own performance and not just his team's performance, but the way his function was performing from both a sort of work attitude and a morale standpoint, and also, probably more importantly, bottom line business results.
Thank you. Any comments or thoughts about the video? Most of the time, provide my internal and external contacts with good, exceptional customer service. Acknowledge, apologize to individuals, my thoughts, incorrect behaviors, and consciously not repeat that behavior. That's awesome. That really sounds like you are tapping into yourself and really understand yourself. Thank you for sharing that, Carolyn.
Yeah, this is Michelle Davis again. I think asking for feedback is imperative because it allows you to hear how other people see you and then thus be able to make some changes, and then asking what instead of why.
Yeah, I really like that one too, Michelle.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that, Michelle. That what instead of why. Would you expand on that a little bit?
Asking, I guess, what am I doing that's not correct, or what am I doing that's not allowing you to understand me or get your job done or what have you, instead of why do you feel that way? Why am I doing this? Why? Do you get more information and then you can take some actions on that. You can't really take a lot of action on why.
And also you could ask yourself too, instead of why, like you said, why,
Right.
asking yourself, what can I do? Yes, thank you. That's really great. Anyone else?
Circling back to Carolyn's comment, and I'm sure you know this as well, Karen, on the consulting part of your life, the conversation with clients about how are we doing and how's the project going and what input do you have and what are your observations and what are you hearing about the project is an ongoing conversation. And in many ways, it is seeking feedback. And just as you've suggested here in the chat, Carolyn, I think that is indispensable in our consulting business and in the world of organization development, which is based on subjectivity. It's based on how people are seeing the world. There's very little objective about organization development and what we do. And it's much more about how people are experiencing their organizations. And so when we're able to ask that question to the client, to the manager, to the boss, to the colleague, so how's it going? We, for the first time, open up the Johari window and open up that blind area so that we get feedback both about the work, but also about how we're showing up in the work, answering the what question more than the why question.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I'm doing, I'm leading a couple of projects on one of my jobs. And one of the things I put in place is what we call an after action review. And that after action review, we have conversations with my team and the client team, and really just kind of ask a series of questions that really gives us some insight and self-awareness on the project that we just completed, and also with the point of really learning from that. And how do we learn from that and then take that learning into the next project. So that's really important. All right. Any last comments?
We can change ourselves. We can't change management or a colleague that's bullying and abusive. You can't change that individual. And that's what I run across, in some of my colleagues that had that situation. You can't change them. You can report them, but nothing will be done for for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And all you can do is watch that person suffer or refer them to the union.
Yes, and I think I that is a super point. I think it's definitely hard to change someone else, but what we might be able to change within ourselves is how we respond to their bullying. So when we are like really self-aware and tapped into that, how do we look at how we are responding to that bullying or that meanness? And I like what you said about they're hurting. So how do we respond to that in a way that does not have us, caught in that cycle with them? Mm-hmm. So that's something that self-awareness does for us, is really have us, really have us understand how to respond. How do we want to respond to that?
One of the things I did early.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for about 6 or 7 years in the KEY program, I taught performance management in the federal system. And the whole goal of my 2-day course was how to help managers avoid getting into the performance system, keeping employees out of the performance system. And the bottom line of that course was building relationships and figuring out a way to build a relationship with employees who are underperforming before you had to turn them into the system and put them into the performance management machinery. And so back to what you were saying earlier, Michelle, I think for me, a lot of self-awareness, which is the whole theme of Karen's presentation here, is around relationship management. It's being in touch with myself, being in touch with the other person, and being able to manage our relationship in an intentional way that helps both parties to the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that it's challenging to determine exactly what to do, even if you're self-aware, because as Carolyn mentioned, you can report them, but then that will increase a lot of times the harassment and the bullying, as well as retaliation. So, and we don't want that. And over the past 4 to 5 years, that's what federal employees have experienced.
Sure.
And so a lot of federal employees, they left. And a lot of us that are still, with the federal government are not going to take that chance.
Yep.
Not going to say anything.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Suzanne, you said maybe asking what is less personal and more subject-based. Can you expound on that a little bit, Suzanne?
I was just thinking that it's hard to receive negative feedback, and perhaps if it's framed in a sense of, what do you want to see done differently, rather than, what's wrong with you and what's wrong with your style or what's wrong with your personality, that makes it easier to receive and focus on your mission or your goal instead.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you for sharing that. I'd just like to share a few other things that might be helpful in enhancing our self-awareness and daily mindfulness practice. Taking regular breaks. And I would say that's something I definitely need to work on, because working from home, I'm sitting here constantly. And so I need to work on taking regular breaks. Paying attention and being present. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And stay curious. Let's stay curious. How do we stay curious? That also enhances self-awareness. And again, this is a continuous process. So here's some things that can enhance self-awareness. I'd like to share a little bit about cultivating presence. My friend and colleague, Marianne Rainey, co-authored a paper called Use of Self in OD and OD Consulting. What matters is presence. But what I'd like to share a little bit about is cultivating presence. And in these 6 things that Marianne and her co-authors say, you'll hear some of the things that we've already talked about. So one of the things is continuing to work on unresolved issues and unfinished business. And that just means, how do we close the loop on some of these things that are unresolved and some of these things that are sticking out? And that might have to do with unresolved issues in power, in authority, intimacy, inclusion, and really thinking about those things that distort our relationships. And Matt just talked about, really self-awareness is about bringing an awareness to relationships. So how do we close those gaps, and how do we resolve issues, especially in relationships? And that could be between client and practitioner. It could be between employee and boss. It could be family related. Just how do we begin to close those gaps? And I'll tell you that doing that is just so freeing, and it really has a lot. It does something to how we see ourselves and how others see us. Committing time and energy to active reflection. And that's really important. And we've talked about the need for reflection. It could be through mindfulness. It could be through journaling. It could just be through really having a process of how we take time to reflect on situations. And this could go beyond simply having an experience to understanding the experience. So really trying to take time to understand experiences and reflect, doing some deep reflection on that. And then actively seeking feedback from colleagues, clients, friends and family, and others. And we discussed that earlier, but that's really important. And it gives us an opportunity to see us through someone else's eyes. Living life fully. And that just means creating a rich ground of experience, all different kinds of experience. And that might mean sometimes we take a leap or really take a risk. Investing in a broad worldview. And one of the things they mentioned in the article in doing this is traveling the world and exploring new cultures. And I know we all can't travel the world, but it could be that we travel the world through reading, or travel the world through exploring our cities and our different towns and sections of towns, and exploring through different cultures, through connecting with people. But it's really about just keep continuing to broaden our worldview and how we see things. And then the last one is experiencing and experimenting with new ways of being. And just kind of getting out of our rut and like doing the same thing all the time, and really taking a risk or to take a different route home, or try a new entree in a restaurant, or just act on impulse. So just something about experiencing new ways of being. And all of these are ways that help to cultivate presence. So we're going to move on to talk a little bit about self-awareness and igniting creativity and innovation. And as we've been leading up to this, I think we begin to see how self-awareness is us being self-aware can really lead to us letting go of things that stand in the way of our creativity and innovation. I want to share something that I read in an article, and maybe it looks at how self-awareness in leaders, rather, I would say, helps to really ignite self-awareness and creativity in others. And I read this article, and this writer said that he said that he had a manager who would often stop by his desk and check up on him. And he wasn't checking up on his work, but he would ask about his family. Like, how's your family doing? And, ask different personal things like that. And he wasn't rushing. He provided unhurried presence. So, he wasn't, he said it wasn't so much as what he said, but what was unsaid and what was indirectly communicated. And he said he would also sometimes just sit in the chair next to him and lean against the desk and generally leave space to listen before moving on. And so he said that demeanor of that leader automatically produced a desire within him to step up his performance, to suggest new ideas, and to deliver better results. So that's an example of how a leader can inspire their employees. A self-aware leader can inspire employees to really create and to have new ideas, to be innovative, to want to give better results. And if you notice, it was the subtle things that he did that really had this young man just like, whoa, like I'll kind of walk through fire for him. I'll do anything. I will, I feel confident in sharing my ideas and not worrying about whether they'll work or not. So that's sort of like what it could look like in practice. Matt, do you have any examples of what it might look like in practice?
Yeah, I mean, your question earlier was about bosses. When I think about clients, I see I've been incredibly fortunate to have clients who really have deep insights into themselves and into their own motivations. And those who haven't, they've been willing to be coached into that space as a result of our work. So I'm thinking of one client right now who leads a group of astrophysicists and engineers, and they run an organization that operates satellites. And he arrived to a place that was kind of run down and demotivated and demoralized, and started previous leader had said yes to everything that everybody wanted, and yet morale was terrible. And so we talked about his alternatives, and we talked about what he could do. And he said, well, I'm going to start saying no to some things. I'm going to start trying to narrow our focus and bring us back toward the center of our mission, rather than all of these other things that I've said yes, that my predecessor has said yes to, which have diffused our focus. And I said, that's a bit counterintuitive. He said, we need to be more narrowly focused. And over the course of the 5 years that we worked together, he just became narrower and more narrow and more narrowly focused, back to the core mission. And you could see the engagement scores go up and up and up and up. He moved out underperforming managers who were very popular. His predecessor wouldn't take action on those managers because they were popular. He moved them out and brought in new managers, and it was a fabulous experience. They're getting ready to launch a new satellite in December, and the morale is through the roof. So,
awesome, thank you.
And this is a guy who's very self-aware, full of lots of insights, about himself and insights about other people. But when I asked him, what gives you the confidence to know that you're right? What he said was, I talk to my people. I know what they want because I talk to them. And so he had a belief about people and about his role as a leader that gave him the confidence to know that he was on the right track.
Yeah, and I think that piece about listening was important as he talked to his people. So again, that whole notion of, really having the self-awareness to know I need to talk to my people, not only talk to them, but I need to listen to them.
Yeah.
Carolyn, it seems like you wanted to ask Matt a question. Okay.
Yes, regarding anyone in a management position. One, they're willing to learn, change, and to improve their management skills. Yes, exactly right, Carolyn. But there are others who do not care or even acknowledge they have a problem. That's right. Don't care or don't know. I don't want to conclude that they don't care. I want to conclude that they don't know. And some don't care. Yeah, there are some people like that out there.
Yeah, if we listen to the example that was given in the video, she talked about this manager who was he just was not a good manager. And then I can't remember exactly what they did, but I guess they gave feedback. His employees gave feedback, and these were things that were blind to him. He did not know. But once finding it out, they created a process for him to find these things out. Then everything changed, and he became more aware. And the beginning, though, one other thing to what you said, Carolyn, was actually there has to also be a willingness, right, to explore self, a willingness to say, I want to be self-aware. I want to know more about myself. And I want to know more about myself and in my relationships and how I interact and how other people see me. So thank you. Let's see. I'd like to just on the vein of keep continuing with the notion of creativity and self-awareness is just looking at the more we're self-aware, the more real we are, really real, the more authentic we are. And people see us as being authentic. And then taking that, if the more authentic we are, the more people want to collaborate with us. They want to co-create with us. They want to be in our space. And they also begin to bring their best ideas forward. So as we think about leadership, this whole notion of being a self-aware person and a self-aware leader could also talk about people who are leaders of teams or leaders of groups or committees, right? How do you bring in that into that self-awareness of leadership into those arenas as well? Then by approaching problems objectively and avoiding blame, you definitely emerge as a natural leader and arrive at most of the solutions. So if we think about things that happen and not point fingers and not say, well, you did this and I did this, but really start to say, okay, here's the issue. Here's the issue. Let's figure out what the solution is. That is another way of people really kind of connecting to you and you having presence and really being seen as a leader. And that takes some self-awareness to be able to, hey, stop and say, hey, let me just listen to what's going on here. Let me reframe this in a way that does not lay blame on anyone. And then by regularly practicing objective awareness in very frustrating situations, will likely to be led down intriguing road of discovery, it says here, and that can lead to new ideas and innovations. And so a lot of times I think you talked about really how do we respond to bullies at work, right? And that is definitely a frustrating situation. And so what happens if we respond to that bully in a way we hadn't responded to that bully before? What might that look like, and what might we be able to discover in that process of responding a different way. Or maybe you're in a meeting and there's a frustrating situation going on, and you respond in a different way, or ask a very, very exciting question, right? And that could lead to an intriguing road of discovery and new ideas and creativity and innovation. And then the last thing for us to think about is the extent to which we do our inner work and we cultivate self-awareness is the extent to which you'll be able to show up as an innovator and a thought leader. So the more that we are willing to explore ourselves, and if we think about like how deep do we want to go in exploring self, but the more we're able to work on our own self-awareness, then we show up as a different type of person, as an innovator and as a thought leader. And I think that could apply in any situation, whether you are the boss of the organization, whether you are in a quote unquote leadership position, you cultivating that self-awareness, and you are able to show up as a creative person, an innovator, and a thought leader. And then just a few things to think about is really kind of opening up our mind to empathy. Good communication makes good collaboration. And these are things we talked about earlier. And especially it makes good collaboration. It also makes good being a good co-creator. And the last thing is looking back and learning. And this is a continuous process, and being willing to look back and learn, whether you're looking back individually or whether you're looking back with colleagues or other individuals. The looking back and learning is important. And again, it is a continuous process. So if we think about cultivating self-awareness, it really requires an introspective approach, right? And we should have a system and a process to actively and consciously engage in recognizing ourselves as an individual and being able to focus all of our being, our beliefs, our values, our physical state and state of mind, our mental health and state of mind, and our spiritual health and state of mind more. And so it's just the acceptance of all of these parts of ourselves, in the areas that we want to explore further. And it's about who we are and what we do daily, every moment, that can help lead us to really being and cultivating a true self-awareness. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here and having this conversation with you all.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to you both. Just want to share our gratitude to Karen and Matt today for such an insightful conversation on how we can better understand ourselves so that we can better contribute to our teams and organizations with creativity and innovation. We're really excited yet again for this new offering and know how invaluable it will be for our community at this time. If folks are ready to go, totally okay. If not, we can reserve the last 10 minutes for any additional remaining questions. Otherwise, you have Matt's email there for further follow-up. Again, thank you so much for everyone for joining and engaging with us today. And we wish you a really, really great and warm Thanksgiving. Thank you so much.